Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global. In the headlines, many children amongst hundreds killed as major earthquake hits Indonesia. King Charles welcomes South Africa's president on the first state visit to Britain. Authorities in Greece launch a rescue operation as migrant boat drifts in rough seas. I am Olatunde Idowu. We begin in Indonesia, where rescuers says many of those killed and injured in a major earthquake on the island of Java were children, as the death toll soars to 268. Officials say more than 1,000 people were wounded. In its latest announcement, the National Disaster Mitigation Agency added that 151 people were still missing. It also said that 22,000 houses had been damaged and that more than 58,000 people had taken shelter in several locations in the region. The 5.6 magnitude quake struck a mountainous region yesterday, causing landslide that buried entire villages near the West Java town of Sinajo. A representative of the National Search and Rescue Agency also confirmed that many of the dead were young people. At least 3 Kenyan peacekeepers have been killed as Al-Shabaab attacked a military base in Somalia. According to a Kenyan military official, the attack occurred at the Sarira forward operating base in the lower Juba region of southern Somalia, near the border with Kenya. He revealed that a lone gunman entered the barracks and fired his rifle indiscriminately, wounding 5 other soldiers before he was gunned down. Yesterday's attack is the latest attack by armed fighters who oppose the presence of foreigners in the Horn of Africa nation. The military rulers in Mali have banned all non-governmental organizations, including humanitarian groups, that are funded or supported by France from operating in the country. In a statement, the junta said the move followed France's decision to stop development aid over Bamako's alleged use of paramilitaries from the Russian Wagner Group. Mali's interim Prime Minister, Colonel Abdoulaye Meiga, denied those allegations, saying they were aimed at destabilizing the country. He said the Russians were working as instructors 3 months ago. Paris withdrew French troops working with Mali to counter jihadist groups. Thousands of public sector workers have embarked on a nationwide strike demanding better wages. This comes after wage negotiations between trade unions and the government collapsed, with the government offering a 3% pay hike, but unions are demanding 10% amid rising inflation. The disputes between the government and its employees piles pressure on President Cyril Ramaphosa as he seeks re-election as leader of the ruling African National Congress ANC party. In a joint statement, the union said the decision of the government unwillingness to pay public servants less than the inflation increases cannot stand. Meanwhile, in Britain, hundreds of workers at a security company, G4s, have voted to strike for 48 hours in early December in a dispute over pay, warning the walkout could cause cash shortages over the Christmas period. The union said in a statement that the G4 workers deliver cash and coins to banks, including Barclays, HSBC, and Santander, as well as supermarkets Tesco, Asda, and Aldi. A spokesperson for G4s, which was bought by American group Allied Universal last year, said the company was continuing to engage with its employees and the union. The union said 97% of its G4 members who took part in a ballot had backed industrial action. Their discontent forms part of a wider industrial unrest in the country this year as pay rises fail to keep pace with soaring inflation. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says Germany must be ready for the situation in Ukraine to escalate and must prepare for any scenario. The Chancellor was speaking at a conference in Berlin. He said the $102.76 billion defense fund announced in the wake of Russia's invasion resulted from a lesson learned to build up the German military defense stock. The World Health Organization has said the lives of millions will be under threat in Ukraine. This winter, as temperatures dropped below freezing, WHO Regional Director for Europe, Dr. Hans Kulge, said half of Ukraine's energy infrastructure was either damaged or destroyed, and 10 million were currently without power. Dr. Kulge told a news conference in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, that Ukraine's health system is facing its darkest days in the war so far, and the best solution is for the conflict to end. The WHO has documented 703 attacks on health infrastructure since Russia's invasion began. Last week, Russia hit more energy installations and civilian buildings in one of its heaviest aerial bombardments of the war. This has been a recent Russian tactic following setbacks on the battlefields, and its impact is starting to be felt more acutely as winter sets in.
This winter will be life-threatening for millions of people in Ukraine. The devastating energy crisis, the deepening mental health emergency, constraints on humanitarian access, and the risk of viral infections will make this winter a formidable test for the Ukraine health system.
The European Union has warned of escalation after emergency talks between Kosovo and Serbia failed to resolve their long running dispute over car license plates used by the ethnic Serb minority in Kosovo. Amidst rising tensions between the Balkans' neighbor, the EU's High Representative Joseph Borrell invited Serbian President Alexander Vucic and Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti to Brussels for emergency talks yesterday. In a statement, Mr. Borrell said the two parties failed to agree to a solution following 8 hours of fruitless discussion. He stated that both leaders bear responsibility for the failure of the talks held yesterday and has called for restraint from both sides of the divide. Serbia has been angered by the decision of its breakaway province Kosovo to require its Serb minority to change their old car plates that dates before 1999 when Kosovo was still part of Serbia. You are watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break. You're welcome back. You're still watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. King Charles has welcomed South Africa's president to the United Kingdom on the first state visit he is hosting as monarch. King Charles and Camilla, the Queen Consort, formally greeted President Cyril Ramaphosa at Horse Guard Parade in London as the two-day trip began. The president will visit Westminster Abbey before attending a banquet hosted by the king at Buckingham Palace later. Mr. Ramaphosa's visit comes as South Africa struggles to tackle continuing power blackout and high unemployment. It is the first state visit to the UK in more than 3 years after they were stopped during the COVID pandemic. Malaysia remained without a government today as King Al Sultan Abdullah said he needed more time to choose the next prime minister after the two main coalitions failed to win a simple majority in general elections at the weekend, which produced a hung parliament. Opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim and former Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin had an audience with the king after neither had obtained majority support from the 222-member parliament. Mr. Muhyiddin said he declined a request from the monarch to form a unity government with Mr. Anwar. On his part, Mr. Anwar said for now there was no question about forming a minority government. The monarch can appoint whoever he believes will command a majority, but he told reporters outside the National Palace that he will soon make a decision. Russia has said it will respect Turkey's legitimate security concerns over Syria, but called on all parties to avoid steps that could worsen the situation. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov disclosed this in a press conference, stating that while there are disagreements between Russia and Turkey in its approach to Syria, Moscow understood Turkey's security concern. Over the weekend, Turkish forces launched cross-border air raids in what is believed to be locations of Kurdish groups in northern Syria and Iraq, which Turkey has blamed for the November 13 bombing in central Istanbul that killed 6 people. The Turkish Defense Ministry said its so-called Claw Sword operation, which also included land-fired weapons, killed 184 fighters and destroyed 89 targets, including shelters, bunkers, caves, and tunnels. The Kremlin's gentle call for restraint comes as Ankara positions itself as a mediator between Moscow and Kiev in the Ukraine war, which began on February 24th with Russia's invasion. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has signaled a possible ground offensive in northern Syria and Iraq after Ankara's forces launched cross-border air raids on locations used by Kurdish groups. Speaking to reporters after returning to Qatar, Mr. Erdogan said Turkey's ongoing military campaign in northern Syria and northern Iraq will not be limited to just an air operation. He revealed that the country is making consultations and its defense ministry and chief of staff will together decide the level of force that should be used by its ground forces. The escalating tensions have prompted global concern, with Russia and the United States urging Ankara to show restraint. In the meantime, Yemen's Houthi rebels have attacked the Al-Daba oil terminal in the country's eastern Hadramaut governorate, both in the Houthi and Yemen's internationally recognized government, which controls Al-Daba, confirmed the attack in the latest strike on the country's oil infrastructure. In a statement, the government said the attack took place while a commercial ship was at the port, adding that the projectile fired from a drone landed on the entrance of the terminal. The Maritime Trade Operations, which is part of the British Royal Navy, said it received a report about the rocket attack and confirmed that the crew and vessel were safe. Turning to South America, the Colombian government and the left-wing National Liberation Army, the country's largest remaining rebel group, have held new peace talks in neighboring Venezuela aimed at ending nearly 60 years of conflict. The push for the talks, which resumed yesterday after they were suspended in 2019, came from Colombia's new first ever left-wing president, Gustavo Petro, who was a former member of the M19 rebel movement. In a joint statement, both sides said they were willing to build peace based on a democracy with justice and for the development of the country. Representatives on Erlin and the government met in Venezuela, which restored diplomatic ties with Colombia in August, 3 years after their relationship was severed. Greece's authorities have launched a rescue operation in the coast of the southern Greek island of Crete after a boat believed to be carrying hundreds of asylum seekers lost steering and was drifting in rough sea. The Greek Coast Guard said early this morning that passengers on the boat had made a distress call to an emergency number during the night to alert authorities. According to the guard, there were up to 500 people on board the vessel, but added that the figure could not immediately be confirmed. The Coast Guard revealed that a Greek Navy frigate, 2 Italian fishing vessels, a tanker, and 2 cargo ships were participating in the rescue operation, but the operation was hampered by near gale force winds. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and South Sudan have reached a staff-level agreement for the release of about $112.7 million in emergency financing. In a statement today, the IMF said the emergency financing under the new food shock window will help the country address food insecurity, support social spending, and boost international research. The statement further stated that the IMF's executive board will approve the financing in the coming weeks. Earlier this month, the United Nations agencies said up to 7.8 million people in South Sudan may face severe food shortages next year due to flood, drought, and conflict. Turning to sport, Saudi Arabia have pulled off one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history as they came from a goal behind to stun two-time winners Argentina in Group C opening in Lusail. The Argentina side, who had the first half goals disqualified, I'll take that again. The Argentina side, who had 2 first half goals disqualified for offside, though Paris Saint-Germain superstar Lionel Messi opened the scoring from the penalty spot. But the Green Falcons, ranked 51st in the world, flipped the game on its head in a stunning 10-minute period after halftime. Having shown their ruthlessness at one end, they demonstrated a ruggedness at the other, holding a stellar Argentina front line at bay to secure only their 4th World Cup win and throw the group wide open. Lionel Scaloni's Argentina are one of the tournament's pre-favorites on the back of a 36-game unbeaten run that included winning the 2021 Copa America. Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. Rescuers in Indonesia say many of those killed and injured in a major earthquake on the island of Java were children, as the death toll soars to 268. Officials say more than 1,000 people were wounded. King Charles has welcomed South Africa's president to the United Kingdom on the first state visit he is hosting as monarch. Greece's authorities have launched a rescue operation in the coast of the southern Greek island of Crete after a boat believed to be carrying hundreds of asylum seekers lost steering and was drifting in rough seas. That ends Spring Global on Western Spring Television. I am Olatunde Idowu. Good evening.